Hello, this is Joe Simhart. This is the 9th talk in the series Cults in the Occulture. Today's topic is something to do with this. This month was my birthday, and astrologers are very interested in our birthdays, our place and time of birth, our names when were assigned at birth, so forth. My office had a birthday party for me. Have a very spooky birthday, Joe. So we celebrate this, but we also wonder what the meaning of our birth is. What's the purpose of life? Why are we even born? And astrology pretends, or at least tries to give us some kind of a connection to the cosmos out there, the stars, the moon, the planets, and our very earth. I first got interested in astrology more seriously in the late 1970s when I was applying to be what's called a keeper of the flame to a particular New Age sect that I mentioned before in my talks, Church Universal and Triumphant. This was the leader, Elizabeth Prophet, and it's one of her lectures. One of the requirements of applying for Keeper of the Flame lessons, and there were 33 of them every month, mimicking the 33 initiation levels of Freemasonry. The requirement was that I had to send in my sun sign, moon sign, and my rising sign. Being born at a DP camp in Germany, 1947, I don't have a birth certificate, and there's no recorded time of my birth. And my mother can't remember. It could be anywhere within a 4-hour period. So in any case, I went to Alan Oken, a famous astrologer in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He's written quite a few books. He's ran a bookstore called the Voice of the Turtle, a New Age bookstore. He was very inclined to follow the Theosophy of Alice A. Bailey. And anyway, he figured out somehow that my rising sign is probably Scorpio, but he couldn't really tell. So precision is very important in setting up a horoscope. I learned how to do it in the early 80s. I learned how to use an ephemeris and use a ruler and a chart to set up somebody's chart. I learned how to read it rudimentarily, but I got a good idea of what goes on in setting up a horoscope. Today you can do it online. You can get programs to do your own astrology, and sometimes within seconds you can cast a horoscope, right? So it's very simple today compared to in the early 80s when I learned. Many systems of astrology are out there. The Jyotish astrology of the Hindus is very similar to Western astrology, but the shape of the horoscope is rectangular as opposed to circular. Then there's Chinese astrology, which uses system of 12 animals, and every year is the year of the snake, the year of the cat, the year of the dog. I was born in the year of the pig or the boar. There's not much correlation between that system and the Western system, but some people try to mesh the two. So astrology is considered the queen of the occult arts. It seems to be the most popular. There's a recent rise in interest in astrology, especially among millennials and Generation Xers, as they call them. An article in 2018 in The Atlantic by Julie Beck explores this rise of interest in astrology. In the article, she says a full-fledged astrology that goes beyond newspaper-style sun sign horoscopes provides a powerful vocabulary to capture not only personality and temperament, but also life's challenges and opportunities. To the extent that one simply learns this vocabulary, it may be appealing as a rich way of representing, not explaining or predicting, human experiences and life events and identifying some possible paths of coping. So there's thousands of combinations of things that an astrologer can read in a horoscope to try to make sense of a person's character, destiny, and so forth. What I learned is the astrology is not scientific. It's not reliable as a prediction tool. It's not reliable as a character tool, but it is reliable to an expert astrologer in getting their client to agree with the reading. There's so much going on in the mythology and the suggestion that most clients will find something of value in a reading, and they can cost anywhere from $50 to $5, $10, $15,000 a reading, depending on what level of astrology you're approaching. So really, astrology is really about agreement and relationship. It's not about accuracy or anything like that. And then there's anti-astrology movements out there. The Skeptics, for instance, will argue that it's useless and so forth. Then there's fundamentalist Christians like Ankerbird and Weldon wrote this book, Astrology, Do the Heavens Rule Our Destiny? And they deconstruct astrology using skepticism and then Christian criticism to show that it might be of the devil, right? Another one, a former astrologer, occultist, Charles Stromer, wrote this, What Your Horoscope Doesn't Tell You, and then goes on to explain that you can be fooled by this and enter into a world of darkness by following astrology as a path. This is written by skeptics, called the Gemini Syndrome, a scientific evaluation of astrology, so you can deconstruct and break it down, and there's many, many other books that can help you with that. There's the history of astrology, for instance, astrology in the Renaissance. It's very popular back then. The occult arts had a revival. The Kabbalah, tarot cards began to shape at that time. And then there's the history of Western astrology. This is quite a good read by Jim Tester. It gives you an idea of where it came from and why we use it today and the different systems. So astrology basically breaks down because what you're seeing in the chart is not really what's going on up there in the sky. There are vast distances between stars in any constellation, and it's not on a flat plane or a kind of a cylinder that the horoscope uses to describe the houses and the signs. For instance, it's almost impossible to do an astrology chart of someone born above the Arctic Circle or below the Antarctic Circle. The information just dissipates, it disappears. It's not there, even though a person has just as much right to the influence of the stars there as they might if they're born in Memphis, Tennessee, right? So astrology can affect people in many ways. It can affect nations. When India was arguing and deciding on their national independence, they had a constitution they were going to sign. There was a big hubbub about when to sign it, and they had to consult an astrologer in India, and they all had to wait like a big part of a day before they could all come back together and actually sign this thing on the auspicious moment described by the particular astrologer that they consulted. And this was more of a ploy to please the population in India, the vast majority of which consult astrologers for things like wedding and auspicious events in life. So astrology is very popular in Australia. In the United States, of course, when Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981 in March, Nancy got very upset, his wife, and she consulted an astrologer in California, and she began to consult this astrologer to run the president's campaign and his travels. The Secret Service had to consult with Nancy as to when the best time it would be for the president to take off and land and where he should go and when. It was a mess, and it was all exposed in a book by Don Reagan, who was the chief of staff in the Reagan White House, and Time magazine wrote it up in 1988, Astrology in the White House and how that affected national politics. So it can be quite invasive in your life if you get obsessed with it. I guess it has value in some sense that it helps people, like a psychologist, might help them reflect on themselves and learn something about themselves during a session. But to overvalue astrology can be dangerous, and it can lead to an obsession about a very unreal world and unreal ideas about yourself that can end up harming you in terms of your decisions in relationships and business and so forth. So one has to be careful with it. It is, in fact, an art, not a science. And the arts are full of illusions and deceptions and all of that. And we can easily overvalue what's going on with astrology. So, I'm a skeptic about it. I don't use it. I can understand its value, but be very careful and use your common sense and your skeptical sense when you enter into a relationship with astrology, if you care to. So thank you.